अब क्या वजह? माननीय मंत्री जी।
Mr. Speaker, sir, I am deeply grateful to all the honorable members who have spoken, Shri M.K. Vishnu Prasad ji, Shri Jayant Sinha ji, Shri Kalyan Banerjee ji, Shri C.N. Anadurai ji, Shri Vinayak Raut ji, Shri Pinaki Mishra ji, Shri Sunil Kumar Pintu ji, Shri Danish Ali ji, B.V. Patel ji, Supriya Sule ji, Mohammad Bashir ji, A.M. Arif ji, Beni Behanan ji, R.K. Raju ji, Imtiaz Jalil Said ji, M. Selvaraj ji, Ravindranath KP ji, Bhagwant Man ji, Shri Vasant Kumar ji, Shri Sanjay Seth ji, Shri Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary ji. Sir, amongst the 15 distinguished... अरे राज आपका तो मैंने अलग रखा हुआ. I was coming to you. Shri Rajiv Pratap Ruji ji, नहीं सुनिए आप थोड़ा सा. I said I am particularly grateful that amongst the honorable members who have spoken were two distinguished predecessors in office and Shri Rajiv Pratap Rudy ji. So you were coming in for a special mention. But you, before I could complete it, you... Sir, it is my considered assessment after listening to this very rich debate, sir, that the fact that this amendment is being brought in 2020 to try to a limited extent to bring the Aircraft Act, Indian Aircraft Act of 1934 up to date in the important area of aircraft and civil aviation security, management of the regulator, DGCA. This is a requirement which we should have felt, if I may be allowed to submit, many years ago ourselves. But it is a reflection of the times we live in, that whilst we had that feeling, and going through the records in our ministry, I find that many of my predecessors must have felt the need. But the need was highlighted through subsequent audits by ICAO. And today, we have no choice but to ensure that these three bodies, which are crucial to the functioning of the civil aviation sector in India, have the position as statutory bodies. And I'm very happy, and I want to express my gratitude to this august House that all members have agreed and are broadly supportive of the thrust of these amendments. Now, it's an entirely different matter that some of my distinguished colleagues see in this amendment perhaps a door opening to privatization of airports, that they have utilized this discussion to bring in a large number of issues like privatization of Air India, the kind of courtesies that private air carriers extend to our honorable colleagues, members of parliament. And I think all these concerns are very valid concerns. And whilst I think that we have now the support of the House in terms of the amendments that we are bringing, let me take this opportunity, sir. This has been a long discussion. 16 honorable MPs have spoken, and therefore I don't want to spend another 2.5 hours responding to each one of them. But let me try and pick up the more important points that have been made so that we emerge from this discussion both with the passage of the legislation and a better idea of where the government stands, what we have been able to do, and what we propose to do in the coming days. Sir, I want to start by Shri M.K. Vishnu Prasad ji. He raised a large number of very important questions. One of the issues he raised was an issue which has been raised repeatedly by my distinguished friend Rudy ji and other members, which is the issue of ATC and the numbers overall and the shortages. Sir, we have total 3,500 very qualified air traffic controllers in position today. The facts of the matter are that in the last 2 or 3 years, we have recruited another 1,000, and next year, according to the estimates I have, is that we will be recruiting another 250. So the submission I want to make to this House is that it is not that there is a shortage. This is a dynamic process. We try and recruit qualified personnel as an ongoing process. And this is a process on which there are no full stops. I mean, if there were, we would not have recruited 1,000 in the last few years, and we are recruiting another 250 next year. Sir, the additional point, one which has been made by all honorable speakers, all honorable colleagues, is the issue of affordability of airfares. And I want to take this issue up front. Sir, the fact of the matter is that our civil aviation sector today stands deregulated. The government does not set airfares. But that should be a good starting point to discuss as to what the real situation is. Sir, I want to submit before you a few facts which stare us in the face. 20 years ago, the airfares on a trunk route, Mumbai-Delhi, was 5,100 rupees. Today, 20 years later, it is 4,600 rupees. Sir, the fact of the matter is, and many honorable members have referred to the stress that the civil aviation sector is facing, we have to deal with two competing claims. One is a growing sector with 7% or 8% penetration, which means that out of 100, only 7 or 8 people fly. When we are transiting from being a $2.89 trillion economy to a $5 trillion economy, it means many more people will fly. This penetration rate is going up from 7-8%, it will be up to 15%, and the number of people who will fly will be many more. The throughput in our airports today, sir, is about 344 million passengers per year. And with this limited penetration, we are already showing double-digit growth. I had given the figures in my introductory. At one stage, it was as high as 17%. So we need to make sure that this growing population, middle class, which Mr. Pinaki Mishra, honorable member, mentioned, is a large figure, 40%, even more. They all want to travel. Shri Chaudhary ji said, air travel is no longer a luxury, it is a necessity, which is a fact. So we have to make sure that airfares are affordable. Sir, but we also have a competing claim, which is that airlines must be viable. Now, there was an exchange which I liked very much when Supriya ji picked on something that my friend Jayan said about, I don't think Mr. Sinha said that everything is hunky-dory. But the fact of the matter is that today civil aviation globally is characterized by a peculiar phenomena, which is that the engine manufacturers make money, the airlines make money, the airport operators make money, the ancillary tourist industry makes money, but the people who run the airlines feel the strain. 1 or 2 airlines, sir, have ceased operations in the country. 2 of them were named. I am not entirely sure whether those failures are on account of failure of business model or other factors. The case is before the NCLT, and I'm not going to try and make a pronouncement here. But the fact of the matter is that airline companies throughout the world feel the strain. I've lived for many years in the United States. I can mention any number of US air carriers, TWA, Pan American, and so on and so forth, who have ceased operation. Swiss Air was acquired by another major European airline. Now, what we have to ensure, therefore, and I take the point made by many honorable members on aviation turbine fuel. The fact of the matter is that the cost of aviation turbine fuel constitutes 40% of the overall operating cost of an airline. Now, this is an open secret. I have been, as Civil Aviation Minister, the last 8 months or so, I have been all along advocating that we must rationalize the tax structure on aviation turbine fuel. I am on record to have mentioned in communications to my colleague, my senior colleague, the Honorable Finance Minister, I've said it in the press, that aviation turbine fuel needs to be brought under GST with full input tax credit. Now, I'm very happy one of my colleagues here said that the minister requires the support of the House for this. I would go a step further, if I may. I also require the support of the state governments, Because the fact of the matter is the state governments are the ones which guard the GST. I'm glad my colleague, the Minister of State for Finance, agrees with that. And therefore, it is my intention, it is my effort, and I intend to pursue this even more vigorously, that with global fuel prices down sub 30, as somebody mentioned, down from 70, now is the time to make sure that we get the states on board and that the GST Council, maybe we could, I request my colleagues in the Finance Ministry, convene a special meeting of the GST Council just in order to be able to bring ATF, aviation turbine fuel, under the GST. And my plea to the states, and many of them are represented here, is that this should be delinked from petrol and diesel, on which the states legitimately have a revenue concern. You can decouple that and bring aviation turbine fuel into the GST. I would also like to mention here my colleague Shri Kalyan Banerjee was, I must say, very restrained. He did not mention the particular case that he brought to my attention. I took immediate action on it. I contacted the airline concerned. I have been assured that that particular complaint is being looked into, and I don't think it is either his desire or my intention to discuss the specifics of that one complaint here. But I must take advantage of this situation and submit to this august House that the enclosed space of an aircraft, whether it is stationary on the ground or flying at 10,000 or 30,000 feet, presents a new situation. When you go to a restaurant anywhere in the world, it says outside, rights of admission reserved, which means there is some code of conduct which has to be followed. Similarly, inside an aircraft, therefore, we have clear regulations which show how a CAR, Civil Aviation Regulation, where may not be followed, but that's a different thing. We have civil aviation regulations which show how complaints of a particular kind need to be addressed. If somebody misbehaves inside an aircraft, I have many cases which don't hit the public domain. I have a case where passengers in an aircraft walked up to the cockpit, banged their fist against the door and told the captain, "You loser, you come out." I have had cases where passengers inside an aircraft, I don't know whether they were inebriated or not, they tried to open the door of the aircraft, which could have led to a catastrophe. And then Supriya ji brought up the case of a particular gentleman. She called him a comic or a startup, I don't know, comedian. Yeah, I'll tell you that why this case is sui generis, and I'm glad. I was wanting to answer a start question on this. I wish I had the opportunity. I would have placed. Every airline is required to follow a procedure set out by the DGCA. According to that procedure, the complaint has to come from the pilot of the aircraft, who makes a complaint. Then the aviation company sets up an internal committee, and that committee makes a determination. Now here what happened is this gentleman in concern, it's not important whom he was hectoring, he tried to disrupt the normal functioning. He was sitting in row 13. The particular gentleman whom he wanted to heckle was in row 1. Till the aircraft was on the ground and this heckling was taking place, he was advised. It's once the aircraft was at 10,000 feet and there are heightened things. I mean, I've had cases in the aircraft inside the aircraft where people have picked up their handbags and thrown them at each other. God forbid, if any of these bags has a heavy object and it cracks the window or something, you will have a decompression problem. So what happened is, when he did this, this would have gone unnoticed. He recorded the incident himself and put it out on social media. That is what happened. Now, otherwise it would have gone unnoticed. When it happened, the concerned airline company put him under a no-flying period, which was initially, I think, 6 months. Then they had their internal committee. They put it for 3 months. Now, after seeing that, there are 4 or 5 other operators. 2 or 3 followed straight away. 1 or 2 waited till they came and the aircraft, the internal committee report was filed. Now, I am very proud of the fact that I am a minister who on issues of security wants to bring a zero tolerance. I don't care who it is, whether it's a member of this House or anyone. Anybody who threatens the physical security of an aircraft inside the aircraft whilst it's airborne deserves no consideration. So as far as I'm concerned, I will always continue to advocate, as I did when I was the president of the UN Security Council Counter-Terrorism Committee. I said there should be zero tolerance. Let the internal committee of the airlines make a determination. They made a determination, 3 months ban, the others are also followed. But I come to another point. I think the rate at which civil aviation is growing in India, Mr. Speaker, sir, we need to look at all these regulations afresh. I have, with the help of legal advice in my own office, asked for a detailed review of these instructions. We cannot have a situation that situations of the kind which are mass protests, I don't want to take the name of any protest that will introduce a political element, start taking place inside aircraft. I want to now proceed to some other, and I want to assure my colleague Shri Kalyan Banerjee that not only his case, but all other cases, I've also had an opportunity to discuss with the Honorable Speaker, we are taking it up with all the airlines. Collectively and individual such cases, I've had one of the honorable members send me a note just now that in some airports, the courtesies which should be shown to honorable members of a separate queue for them to facilitate, ticketing or entry, etc., I will follow that up, and I want to give. Well, some members want it. If it's not available, we should do it. Okay. Now I want to come to the issue of one of the very important issues raised was that DGCA, who is a regulator in this sector, civil aviation, on the one hand says that some particular kind of incidents have taken place and yet is taking no action. I want to assure this House that the DGCA as a regulator was the first, amongst the first globally, which started taking cognizance of these 320neo Pratt & Whitney engines and was the first off the mark. And the regulator decided, in consultation with all the other regulators, to institute a system that no aircraft which could take to the skies unless it had one engine which was otherwise not part of this category. So, in other words, this whole 300 engines which needed to be changed, I review these figures periodically. 230 have already been changed, and the others will be changed very shortly, and the engines are being flown. Now, but I ask this honorable, this August House another question. Supposing we had decided that no, we are not going to allow these aircraft to fly even after the safety precautions had been built in, what would have happened? You would have grounded 200 airplanes? It would have been 2 airlines were involved in this. So you have to take a pragmatic decision, but the decision that was taken ultimately was in the interest of air travel with the security aspect completely built in. Now, some issues were raised again on affordability. I come back to that, Mr. Speaker, sir, that in the last 1 or 2 days, 3 days, students coming back from Bangalore, I would sincerely request that we check our facts. My problem in the last few days has not been high airfares. My friend, there has been falling demand. In fact, domestic air travel is down by about 20–30%, and I don't know what is going to happen globally, but I was looking at some figures. Some figures I have are that, according to IATA's estimate, global aviation may lose between $63 to $113 billion on account of the coronavirus. Now, if the global airline are going to lose this amount, and we are the world's 3rd largest domestic civil aviation market, sir, we cannot be immune from this virus, at least on the economics of it. So we will have to, in the coming days, our airlines have been in touch with us. They've been in touch with my senior management, the secretary, etc. They've given us a number of suggestions. We have taken up some of these suggestions. Some of these suggestions include that we request the oil companies to perhaps consider a 30-day credit for them. I have also suggested to the Finance Ministry that the reconciliation can take place on a 15-day period rather than 30-day period so that the fall in global oil prices can help benefit. So these are a large number of suggestions will come, and we will follow them up. But at the end of the day, it will be in everyone's interest, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the viability of the airlines is kept in mind by us, because the kind of service which is being provided, my colleague Mr. Jayant Sinha mentioned the number of airports, he mentioned the passenger traffic, the number of aircraft. We today have, after Jet Airways ceased operation, we had 560 aircraft in the skies. Today we have more than 700. Some of these airlines have 300 planes on order. I think the benchmark is not 1,200 aircraft in the coming years, but 2,000. But in order to make the system viable, airlines have to survive also. So I would say that we need to take a judicious look both on airfares and the viability of airline. And from the government side, we stand ready. I know other governments have been making this announcement, but we will happily consider the proposals which are coming, and with the help of our colleagues in the Finance Ministry, see what we can do. May I, sir, take up now an issue which clearly occupies a lot of sentimental space in this House, the future of the Maharaja. I must confess that when I was a diplomat in my other profession, I was there for 40 years. Wherever I had an opportunity, even if I was working for the UN, I always preferred to travel Air India. It's something emotional with us. But, sir, it's not something that we would like to do as of choice. And let me place the following facts through you to this August House, sir. Air India is a first-rate asset. On that, there's no doubt. It has about 120 planes. It flies to 50 international destinations. It flies to 80 domestic destinations. It has very well qualified and experienced engineers, pilots. But the fact of the matter is that in the last period, there was a turnaround phase that I think Chaudhary ji and some other honorable members mentioned. We have injected 30,000 crores already during this so-called turnaround period. Kalyan Banerjee mentioned particular year, profit, etc. If I didn't have the debt and you had to start afresh, maybe a case could be made out. Because today, Air India's cumulative, I don't have the figures ready, but should be about 7,000–8,000 crores would be the annual loss. And we have accumulated loss of about 62,000 crores or thereabouts. Now, you are in a situation where you have fragile finances, we are in a debt trap, and they are operating in a market where a government entity or somebody who's a national carrier but tied to government rules finds themselves at a complete disadvantage vis-a-vis private carriers. Because what happens in a private carrier, because it's private ownership, they will take cutthroat decisions for every little dollar on the spot. Here, you will have to go through the tendering process, L1, etc. If you don't do that, you take a decision, you have to face your own agencies thereafter. So by and large, we came to the conclusion, for good reason, that on the last occasions, our inability to sell Air India was on account of the fact that you wanted to withhold 25%, 25 or 26%. We didn't want to sell some other part. This time the decision was taken that the current situation where we are bleeding, and I choose my words very clearly, we are losing 26 crores per day. This was the loss prior to the coronavirus setting in. After the coronavirus, the loss will be higher than the 26 crores because many routes are being shut because we are cutting travel from those places. So as a result, what we have decided is that we will ensure that the staff of Air India, and Air India has not recruited for many years. Therefore, there's no extra staff. So, in any case, whoever buys the airline will need the people, the pilots, the engineers, the air cabin crew in order to run the airline. So we will ensure that our people who have served the nation with great distinction in Air India, they went to Wuhan to carry out an operation. Prime Minister decided to issue letters of appreciation. Mr. Speaker, sir, I personally handed out those letters of appreciation to everyone. And this is well deserved. But equally, let me say, if you did not have a national carrier, as most countries in the world don't have national carrier, what you do is you will go into the market and you hire whatever is available in terms of short-term leasing or people to bring them back. Now, I see, sir, that you would like me to wind up quickly. Let me see if there are some other issues which are of an importance, which is, yes. Pinaki ji raised the issue of budgetary shortfalls. Let me just mention to him that perhaps there's some misunderstanding there. What we had asked for and what we have got is roughly the same. And what has happened is that a certain amount for Air India, because it's going into privatization, was excluded. So if there's 2,800 which was there for Air India, so if you look at the request we made to the Finance Ministry and what we've been granted is by and large the same. My friend Bhagwant Maan, I don't know whether he's still here or not, said so, he's gone. नहीं, बट उन्होंने कुछ ऐसी बात कही अध्यक्ष महोदय, नहीं, वो ऐसे कही कि जो इंटरनेशनल फ्लाइट्स की है, मुझे बड़ी गर्व से मैं कहना चाहता हूं कि अमृतसर से तो इंटरनेशनल फ्लाइट्स हमने बहुत बढ़ाई हैं, बर्मिंघम भी भेज रहे हैं, टोरंटो भी भेज रहे हैं, इसलिए अगर वो कुछ ये कहना चाहें कि चंडीगढ़ में भी थोड़ी और बढ़ा दो, पर दिस इज एन इशू व्हिच इज रिजन बाय अदर पीपल, मेक ए पर्टिकुलर एयरपोर्ट एन इंटरनेशनल एयरपोर्ट, दिस इज ऑल डिमांड ड्रिवन. I mean, we are willing to set up the infrastructure, but those who operate the flights will make a decision based on the business potential and based on the viability of the route. Sir, a large number of, 16 honorable members spoke. If I have your permission, what I will do is, I will send a letter to each one of them, because I have the replies here, but I think I will then conclude by thanking all honorable members for the support. Yes, Pakyong Airport, let me just say this was a very important airport which was inaugurated by the Honorable Prime Minister last year. The airport is now operational. What happened after that, there were local issues which developed. There was a land on the side which the local residents, we needed to refurbish that. There were also issues of weather, etc. This airport, because of the terrain, and you need a particular kind of landing into it for some months in the year because of the weather and low-hanging clouds. But these are issues we are wanting to resolve, but currently it is operational. I personally monitor. It is operational. It is operational now. It's being operational. Okay. Yeah, I'm coming. UAVs, let me submit to the House. Sir, Pakyong Airport, we have nearly resolved the issues. We hope to make it operational soon. But it's not, as of date, not operational, but we'll make it operational soon. Insofar as unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs are concerned, or drones as they're possibly called, according to current assessment, we should have something in the vicinity of 3 to 4 lakh drones operating in our airspace. We need a policy. We have started working in the direction of that policy. To begin with, we had a first round of registration when 20,000 drones have, owners of 20,000 drones have registered. We need to follow that up. We have wanted to do we have decided to follow a policy where each drone will have an embedded chip, where the drone will be allowed to fly to an area for which it has permission. If it transgresses, and this is on account of security consideration, it would immediately have to come back to the operating base. All this work is going on. We have various people working on this. We know that drones constitute a great force multiplier, both in terms of economic development. They can be used to deliver medicines, they can be used to monitor projects. Those of us in the political space know we are using them for other purposes. And we are today in the happy situation of saying we are one of the countries which is in the forefront of devising a comprehensive policy which will govern the use of drones. Now, they come in all shapes and sizes, from 250 grams to 2,500 kilos. And therefore, we have to be very careful that they can be used as very, very serious security. And I can share with this House, when we first conducted this exercise, we asked all the security people, which are the areas that you would like to see excluded. Now, perhaps I shouldn't be saying it, but in the interest of transparency, I will. Most of the country looked red then. That means everything would be excluded, or rather large. Now, this is understandable, because when you're getting a new technology and you're getting a new policy in, you want to be extra cautious. But as we negotiate, etc., I think that in the coming months, we will be able to come up with the first draft of such a policy. At least that's my expectation. I'm seeing my senior civil servants slightly, I'll push them in that direction. But we will have this thing. But we also need to make sure that those drones who have not registered, between 20,000 and the 3 lakhs we have. You see, a drone is a kind of technology, if you're coming in from an outside country, you can have one packed in your suitcase. A good technology student in a university can manufacture one. Now, as long as you're putting it to good use, it's a positive thing. But equally, it can be used to, as a major security threat. And for instance, in my smart city mission, I'm very worried that cyber security, etc., can get into the integrated command and control sector. So I think we have to be extremely careful, but we are in the process of developing that policy. On in the case of Pakyong, there was a landslide, which is okay, and SpiceJet is now being asked to start the flights. So that is, we're not exactly there, but we'll get there very quickly.
आजकल कम है, आजकल उड़िया स्थापित है।
मैं नहीं, वो रूजी जी को पटना और बीटा का बोला, या मैं उनको दे देता। अच्छा, मैं आपसे ये भी कहना चाहता हूँ, हाँ नहीं, इसमें बिल के बाद कर दूंगा उनको। और मेरे पास वो स्टेटिस्टिक्स हैं, कितना पैसा है पटना एयरपोर्ट, कितना बीटा एयरपोर्ट, रनवे की क्या लेंथ है, क्या करने जा रहे हैं। उनका पॉइंट इज वेल टेकन। इनकी हमारे मंत्रालय के अधिकारियों के साथ कई मीटिंग हुई हैं। मेरे साथ एक मीटिंग जो ड्यू थी, वो अब मैं जल्द से जल्द करके और इसको आगे हम बढ़ाएंगे। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
प्रश्न है कि विधेयक को विचार